Hello, welcome back to my office. So today's topic I decided to discuss is choosing repertoire for young junior high band. There are certain specific things that I like to look for when choosing repertoire. This is an important age. For my school system, it is the beginning of their middle school music career, or their potential middle school music career. And so it's very critical that you capture their interest and allow them to have success as much as possible. It's about instilling an enjoyment, because honestly, they're not going to work really hard at it if it doesn't bring them some level of joy and confidence and satisfaction. So the first thing I like to do is I like to look for pieces that have evocative titles. This isn't 100% of the time. There are some really nice pieces that are called blanco type things, like a sonata or piece or concert piece or so on. That's okay as long as the piece is really, really interesting and has an engaging beat or a really catchy tune or something like that. But generally I like to look for pieces that have something that is a little more concrete, a little less abstract in its expression. For example, I have two pieces that I picked here. African Festival. Okay, so we've all been to a party. It's a festival. African Festival. Here's this one called Jingle Bells Fantasy. Jingle Bells is a common piece of music that we hear all over the place, and we can talk about what a fantasy means. And just have a lot of fun with that. They're both just very evocative and interesting. The second thing that I like to do is review the piece before I pass it out, and there are a few things that I look for specifically. If you only have limited time and you're not able to look through every single part, I recommend pulling out two parts specifically. The first trumpet part and the first clarinet part. And I'll show you why. If I pull out the first trumpet part, what I'm looking for is ranges. A young sixth grader, generally speaking, unless they work really hard at it, is not going to be able to hit much over an E at the top of their staff, most of the time. And unless you have to know your band, you have to know your players. You have to know what their capabilities are. But generally speaking, I limit it to an E. Then you also have to check tessitura, which means, we don't want to be, if there is an E in there, we don't want it to be E and then an E and then another E and an E, because eventually it's going to blow out their lips and it's going to be frustrating. So if I look at this part, I'll hold it up for you. I see some C's somewhere in here, right there. Looking pretty good. No, we're good. We're all within the staff, and yet there's some accidentals and some interesting things. This is the first trumpet part. So you know that your first trumpet players are not going to be complaining bitterly about the range, and that's going to be good. You have to be very careful with that because it's really developmental more than anything else. The second one is the first clarinet part. So the first clarinet part, you can see it looks very similar in range, but with them you have the added challenge of the break, which is when you're going between B flat, the one in the middle, this is a staff, B flat here, and then anything above that is above the break, which means you have to throw a bunch of fingers down, and anything below that is below the break, where you remove a bunch of fingers. So if you're rapidly going back and forth between those notes, that's important to learn as a clarinetist, certainly, but it's going to be very frustrating for a young clarinetist that hasn't really learned. They've just learned a little bit about the break at that point, and it's kind of hard to go back and forth. So this part is very safe for them. Therefore, I would probably say that in a pinch, if I couldn't look at anything else, this would probably be a good one to try to pass out to them. And it is. African Festival's really nice. He didn't pay me or anything. If I look at the other piece that I brought out purposely, Jingle Bells Fantasy, seems very youthful. But if I do the same test, first of all, wow, yellow paper, it's hecka old. And but that doesn't matter. I mean, there's a lot of older pieces that are wonderful, and make sure that you look through them and see what kind of treasures you might have somewhere in the annals of your music stash. But if I take a look, this is the first cornet part, the first trumpet part. And you can see right away up here, whoa, we've got G, D, G, C, D, G, G, D, G, all these Gs. If they can even hit those Gs, they certainly aren't going to be able to hit it that often. And then the rest of the time, it's pretty high again, over and over and over again. This is going to be very frustrating for a young player, and probably impossible for most of them, unless you have some really, really advanced young people. If I look at the first clarinet part, and usually these both will connect together. You rarely would have something that was really high like this and then something very easy in the first clarinet part. But if I show you this, wow, automatically we're all above the break up here. Then if I move to this measure right here, B flat below the break, D flat above the break, G and A below the break, B flat trilling. Wow, you're going to be jumping rapidly back and forth between that. And this is in 2/4 time allegro. So it's going to be really fast. And that's going to be very frustrating, especially if it happens often. And there are several places where it happens. So I would probably steer clear of this unless I had a lot of really advanced players and or it was for an older band. And so this would probably be better for my 7th and 8th grade band. Then there would be a little less frustration. Because frustration, unfortunately nowadays, it seems like a lot of young people are not able to cope with that frustration. And it tends to lead to quitting because they feel like it's something wrong with them personally, when really it's developmental and it's the choice that we made. I've done it before. Choosing the wrong literature is a big problem. So I hope that those little tips might have helped you. Again, it's my opinion. If you have other opinions, please share them, because I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got some ideas about great pieces that are of that same approximate age range, or even the older age ranges, go ahead and post them down below. So I hope to hear from you soon, and I hope you enjoyed my video. Bye-bye.